Mississippi Power presents a Mississippi Public Broadcasting production, The Gulf Islands, Mississippi's Wilderness Shore. Additional funding provided by Chevron, the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, and the Foundation for Public Broadcasting in Mississippi.
Human beings are essentially part of nature, and they only realize their true identity when they are completely integrated into a natural state. Wilderness is essentially an untouched place from which we can look back and see where we have gone and where we are going. That point of view, that perspective changes not just one thing, it changes everything. It changes the way we interact with everything in life.
Created long ago as quartz sand eroded and washed down rivers from the eastern United States mountain ranges, these offshore barrier islands and the water surrounding them are part of the largest national seashore in America, the Gulf Islands National Seashore. Home to creatures of the air, the land, and the sea, they are our wilderness shore. The Gulf Islands National Seashore stretches 160 miles from Cat Island in Mississippi east to the Okaloosa area near Fort Walton, Florida.
May 29, 1957. Dear Mrs. Dean, thank you for your letter calling attention to the plans for the acquisition of bird sanctuaries on Petty Boy, Round, and Horn Islands. The accompanying data about the size and present status of these islands have been read with interest. It is my opinion that all of our outlying islands should be maintained as inviolate sanctuaries for birds. Sincerely yours, Fannie A. Cook, Museum Curator, Mississippi Game and Fish Commission.
Fannie Cook believed that our barrier islands in Mississippi deserve special treatment. Efforts such as these would pave the way for preservation of the islands as part of a new type of national park, a national seashore.
Everyone was conservation-minded. We all thought alike and wanted to save the barrier islands, not just for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren, and keep them the same without being developed, without being overrun and destroyed.
M. James Stevens, a businessman who had moved south from his native New Jersey, fell in love with his adopted home, the Mississippi Gulf Coast. His passion for Southern history led him to become involved in local efforts to save Fort Massachusetts, which had been built on Ship Island by the United States government in the 1800s, used to house Confederate prisoners during the Civil War, and which was falling into disrepair. Stevens found an ally in Mississippi Congressman William Calmer, who joined forces with Floridians J. Earl Bowden and Congressman Bob Sykes to take the cause to Washington. In 1971, President Richard Nixon signed the bill placing Ship, Horn, and Petty Boy Islands, along with Davis Bayou, into Park Service stewardship. Almost half of Cat Island would be added in the years to follow. These, along with beaches and mainland historical sites in Florida, became the Gulf Islands National Seashore.
There are 360 units of the National Park Service and about 43.5 million acres. Gulf Islands National Seashore is the largest national seashore in the National Park Service system. To communicate that to people and kind of helps them understand what a special place this is.
While the creation of the Gulf Islands National Seashore was cause for many to celebrate, the details of just how the Park Service would manage the islands were unresolved. Donald Bradburn, a medical doctor and photographer and a resident of New Orleans, had a particular passion for Horn Island and wanted it to remain untouched.
Donald Bradburn played a very important role on many levels because you realize his photography spoke to people very emotionally. They're just hauntingly beautiful photographs of the island. And then Donald Bradburn wrote letters, talked to the right people, began to make the political connections that were important to protect those islands with their wilderness designations.
Citizens presented a wilderness proposal requesting official wilderness designation for Horn Island. There were public hearings, a hard-fought grassroots campaign, and in the end, success.
You wouldn't expect very many people to support something as esoteric as wilderness designation. But it was magnificent to go into that hearing and have it completely packed with hundreds of people, and every single one was in support of wilderness for Horn Island.
Petty Boy and Horn Island are the two only designated wilderness islands in Gulf Islands National Seashore. There are only less than 60 congressionally designated wilderness areas, and we have 2 of them right here in Jackson County in South Mississippi. The community is a kind of the stewards of that little National Park Service jewel.
Since colonial times, the barrier islands off America's shores have acted as sentinels for ships in the mainland. With its naturally deep channel, Ship Island has seen more activity than its sister islands and has attracted visitors for generations. With the Park Service as its new guardian, Ship Island would see even more activity. In the 1920s, Biloxi fisherman Captain Pete Scrametta began operating a ferry service to Ship Island, bringing visitors to the island to enjoy its sand and surf.
What is special about Ship Island? Solitude when you're out there. You You take the ferry out on an 11-mile trip. You leave all the automobiles behind. For children, it's a wonderful experience. Children see dolphins on the way out. They see dolphins around the island. They pick up shells. Fishing's always good around the barrier islands as well. You see so many, it's so different from the Mississippi's man-made beach. It's a totally different environment.
Welcome to your national park. You're officially inside the 1-mile boundary. We hope you have a great, safe Ship Island day.
Besides recreation, Ship Island, along with the other barrier islands, plays a significant role in our environment and safety.
There are a variety of habitats on the island, beginning if you sort of start at the water shoreline interface and sort of move into the interior of the island. First habitat you reach is what we call the primary dune, or the sort of sandy beaches. And those are just areas where the sand gets washed up in the wave action and sort of creates these sort of dune areas. Typically behind those dune habitats you'll get really low wetland areas, such as we see behind me. You'll get emergent marsh vegetation. Then as you move up, you'll move into an area what typically people call scrub shrub habitat, which has, given that it has the name shrub, it has a lot of shrubs in it, things like wax myrtle, yaupon, things like that. And then as you move up into the sort of higher areas of the islands, you get into the what we call the maritime forest. Those are areas with things like live oak as well as slash pines.
There is the barrier island mainland connection. Without the barrier islands, we say, well, you wouldn't have seafood here, because the barrier islands slow the waters and make them calmer. Fish, shellfish can grow up in the marsh areas. This is considered the nursery ground of the Gulf.
Barrier Island system really does provide an enormous protection for the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And when you get a storm surge coming in from deep water, when it hits that shallow sound, that surge doesn't have but one way to go, and that's up.
Hurricane Katrina's devastation in August of 2005 raised awareness of the condition and the importance of the barrier islands.
I was surprised there was a tree, an animal, or anything left on those islands. I thought the islands would be gone. However, they survived. They changed, but they survived, and to me that's a miracle.
The islands survived. The Gulf Islands are dynamic, but their natural shift westward relies on an adequate supply of sand. Hurricanes and ship channelization impact and change the islands. Katrina's devastation garnered national attention and money to supply the islands with what they need: sand.
There are some threats to the barrier islands. I mean, they are dynamic, so they're going to move. So, we can't really expect them to stay in one place and stay the same size or shape. Some human activity, some of the dredging that has to take place in order to maintain ship channels. But I think we can also turn that into a positive. If we take that dredge material that we have to dredge up to keep the channels cleared out, if we can concentrate that in certain places. There's been some success stories along the East Coast and along the Texas coast so that you can have wildlife and you can have positive beneficial uses and values, but also the dredge material can then be put there. It's all a matter of just working together, and I think we're moving in that direction.
The Gulf Islands have served our physical needs for decades. They also provide a retreat for reflection and inspiration. Perhaps the artist Walter Anderson understood this best.
Horn Island is kind of a special place to a lot of people, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of people who go out there. It's inspired people that are very talented, like Mr. Anderson, and it's a quiet place where man's hand is largely unnoticed.
The Anderson family moved over from New Orleans, started their own art colony with the pottery, and Walter was the middle boy, middle child, and spent many, many hours, days, and weeks at Horn Island, where he would go in his skiff, hand row it out with a makeshift sail. Sometimes if the wind were right, he could sail. And that's where he did a lot of his painting.
We didn't even know that he was doing anything until after he died. He was considered a bum, a crazy old bum. Even my mother believed that he was wasting an incredible talent. He got $5 a week for decorating pottery at the showroom. That's what he lived on. He bought sardines and rice and apples, and he went out to Horn Island.
He was the nature. He was the raccoon, or he was the bird, or he was the snake. He had this symbiotic relationship with nature.
My father tried to explain at one time in his writings what it was to look from that place, what it felt like to look from that mystical point of reference from that place. And he was describing watching a bird take flight. And what he wrote was, the bird flies, and in that fraction of a second, man and the bird are real. He is not only a king, he is a man. He is not only a man, he is the only man, and that is the only bird. And every feather, every mark, every part of the pattern of its feathers is real, and he, man, exists, and he is almost as wonderful as the thing he sees. That is the best expression that I've found of what this point of reference is about. It is the ability to see our own existence. What he did was he lived most of his life on Horn Island, painting beautiful pictures to try and give the gift of what he had discovered to other people. He lived for 20 years in the wilderness, more than 20 years in the wilderness, and he learned things that few people have ever known. He's worth investigating. You know, he's worth exploring. He's worth following a little bit. When you see his paintings, when you see the beauty that he saw, and when you realize that those are paintings of the beauty of man, it's a message that we need to hear. It's a path that we need to follow. Truthfully, I didn't meet my father until after he was dead. Really meet him, really get to know him. I met him on Horn Island. I met him by looking through his eyes and seeing what he saw. Not long after he died, I sailed a small boat out there by myself and stayed alone on the island for about 10 days. But I went out not looking for anything. I just went out to have a good time. You know, I was gonna, fish and sail and sleep on the beach for 2 weeks on a remote island 15 miles out in the Gulf. I communed with forces much larger than myself, and I found who I was. To me, it's not just so many tons of sand out in the Gulf of Mexico, slowly moving toward the west. To me, it is more like a place within. It is the outermost place that becomes the innermost place in the spiral of creation. always carry a little bit of Horn Island deep within my soul.
Whenever I have an opportunity to go out to Ship Island or in Florida just to be on the water, it's just a remarkable opportunity. The wildlife is just wonderful. The sights and sounds, the colors, just the beauty of this area is so magnificent that it draws me here and keeps me here.
You can get a boat out to the islands to see what we're talking about, to see how beautiful it is, and then you'll understand. If you've never been to Horn Island, Ship Island, Cat Island, and Santa Rosa Island, over in Florida they have their own group of islands. It's just, it's a very special part of life to see everything natural.
I think my fondest memory of my time out on the Barrier Islands, having spent some extended periods out there, are watching the spectacular sunsets. I mean, it just didn't seem to matter whether it was cloudy, even if it was a cloudy, rainy day. Right at the last minute, it always seemed to be, a little bit of clearing in the distance, and those sunsets. And I can honestly say, I think if everybody could go out to the Barrier Islands and see one of those spectacular sunsets, I really think people would have a very different feeling and attitude toward our national parks. I think they really would just really value just having these places out there. The Barrier Islands that we have here are really a treasured resource. They look very much probably like they did 200, 300 years ago. Maybe a little smaller, maybe in a little bit different geographic location, but from the perspective of the wildlife that are using them, the plants that we see out there, just the ecosystem and the ecology of these islands in general is very much intact. And so that's a true resource that Mississippi has that not many other states probably can say that, and we should be very proud of them, and we should do all we can to protect and maintain their integrity.
I took the job at Gulf Islands being warned by a lot of people in the know that, hey, this is a challenging spot. I mean, you're going to be out on a barrier island. You're going to be there not only on sunny summer days, you're going to be there in January. You're going to be there on Christmas. You're going to miss holidays. You're going to work every weekend. So I took it with caution. But I got out there and it just kind of wrapped around me. After the first year, I guess I kind of took ownership of the island. Then several years go by and I realized that the island had taken ownership of me.
Well, each season you see something different on the National Seashore. In the spring, of course, you've got all the migratory birds, seabirds that are passing through. Sea oats, the vegetation you see on the island, the marshes are wonderful. A lot of the sand dunes along the island can become really huge in some parts of the island. It's beautiful just to go down there and photograph that.
From their creation and formation ages ago, the Gulf Islands have endured to protect us, teach us, and nourish our souls. These islands are part of America's natural heritage. They are our wilderness shore.
All movement is to visible music, although few people hear it. It comes from the sun and the wind and the movement of water and the running rabbit and a crowing cock. And together it is part of a great symphony. The longer we listen and the quieter we are, the more we hear. And when we do hear, we are a part of the music instead of an unwelcome interruption.
The Gulf Islands, Mississippi's Wilderness Shore, a Mississippi Public Broadcasting production, was proudly presented by Mississippi Power. Additional funding provided by Chevron, the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources,